social structures rather than religion. Though religious texts, which is the Quran and the Hadith, which is the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, these are often invoked to justify their lack of progress. It is an attempt to legitimize what a male-dominated society wants to do to suppress women's rights. The Quran not only awards equal status to both the sexes in the normative sense, but also concedes a degree of superiority to men in its own social context. However, the theologians conveniently ignored the context and made men superior in the absolute sense, and this is not surprising. Now this is quite contrary to what the Quran tells us. We will examine a few quotations from the Quran and the Hadith that highlight the most important aspects of feminine virtue. Let us see what the Quran says. The Quran expresses two main views on the role of women. It both stresses the equality of women and men before God in terms of their religious duties, which means, the belief in God, the oneness of God, the fasting, the praying, the going for the pilgrimage, and all of those religious duties that are the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and places them under the care of men. That is, men are financially responsible for their wives. In one place it states, and this is quote, unquote, men are the maintainers and protectors of women because Allah has made the one of them to excel the other, and because they spend of their property for the support of women. The Quran explains that men and women are equal in creation and in the afterlife. Surah Nisa, which is chapter 4 of the Quran, and in verse 1, it states that men and women are created from a single soul. One person does not come before the other. One is not superior to the other, and one is not the derivative of the other. A woman is not created for the purpose of a man. Rather, they are both created for the mutual benefit of each other. I will quote some words of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that stresses a high standard of conduct which a man is meant to maintain in his relations with women. And I'll quote just a few. Only a man of noble character will honor women, and only a man of base intentions will dishonor them. The best among you, he told the men, is he who is best for the family. The most perfect man of religion is one who excels in character. But the best among you is he who gives the best treatment to his women folk. Do we need to talk more? The following traditions give a clear indication of the position that a woman occupies in Islam. Women are the other half of men. Fear God in respect of women. Heaven lies beneath the feet of mothers. Now that is those who serve their mothers well, and they would be deserving of paradise. If a man to whom a girl is born neither buries her alive, humiliates her, nor gives his son's preference over her, he will be allowed to enter heaven by God as a reward. Shall I not tell you what the best object of your charity is? It is your own daughter who has returned to you as a widow or a divorcee, and who has no one to earn for her except you. That is, to spend for a daughter in need is the best form of charity. When a man is tested through his daughters by God, and he treats them well, his actions will guard him from hellfire. Now from the above, it is explicitly clear that the religion provides equal standing to the men and women, the freedom of work, marriage, divorce, custody of children, leadership, property and inheritance. And of course, I will be happy to answer any specific questions that will come in the course of this evening. And to summarize it all, a woman right from the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, this is the pre-Islamic era, and with the coming of the Prophet, He has given all these rights to the women. A woman has had a right to education, to a career, to the roles, to a choice in her marriage. No parent can marry off their daughter without her prior consent and permission. It's a strict no-no. Her consent is absolutely necessary. She can file for a divorce. It's not just a man's prerogative. And she is into the business, she's into the professional field, and in today's time you will know, and I will be happy and I'm proud to tell you that as women, we wear many hats. We perform a perfect job in the house, where we are the wife, we have children, we rear the children, we groom them, because that is the best school. And the mother is the best teacher. And then we have our functions outside, and we participate in social activities, in community services, name it, and the women are there. And I'm so proud that I was not born a boy and a girl, and I'm happy to be a woman. Thank you.
A worldwide denomination called the Anglican Communion. England used to be called Angleland. Don't tell Sharon. And that was later changed to England. So the worldwide denomination was called Anglican, derived from the initial country where this Anglo-Catholic Protestant movement began in the turbulent Middle Ages in the mid-1500s. So when settlers from England came to colonize America in the 16th and 17th centuries, they brought their religious heritage with them. That was natural. They eventually separated from the Mother Church of England over the issue of the King or Queen of England being head of both church and state, typical of Americans. By 1792, the Episcopal Church was finally established as an American denomination with its own governing body, with the Book of Common Prayer, with a national constitution and a way to consecrate its own bishops, all independent of the Church of England. It takes its name, Episcopal, from the Greek word episkopos, which means bishop or overseer. It has three distinct orders of ordained ministry. Bishops, who are first of all priests, consecrated to be the overseer of a diocese, or usually that's a whole state. Priests, who are the spiritual leaders of the individual congregation, and deacons who do servant ministry with the poor, the imprisoned, and the dying. The governing body of the whole Episcopal Church is known as the General Convention, which is a meeting of clergy and laity who gather every 3 years to make decisions about the denomination. They make any changes necessary to the canons. That's not the gun thing. It means policies and procedures from the corporate world for church governance and practice. Now, the General Convention, since that's the governing body, over the years gave women the right to be ordained as deacons in 1889. And they worked mainly in social ministries such as nursing, starting orphanages, and later began a training school for women. Following the revival of the female diaconate, the Episcopal Church also revived monastic orders for women. So in 1845, the first American nun in the Anglican tradition took vows and formed the Sisterhood of the Holy Communion in 1852, whose ministry was mainly in hospital work. By 1880, there were 13 Episcopal sisterhoods, or you might call that religious orders. Monastic institutions for men were later in organizations, and they often looked to the female sisterhoods for an example to emulate. And that's how they figured how to organize. They followed the women. In the late 1860s, it was the lay women who often organized frontier parishes, recruited men to serve on the parish lay board, called the vestry. They raised the funds for church buildings and for the houses that the clergy lived in. They taught in the Sunday school, and they provided the congregational music. In the early 1900s, several women organizations sprang up for Episcopal lay women, which concentrated on needs of female factory workers, Christian literature for parishes in the West, prayer and evangelism, and funding for female missionaries, and the start of the settlement house movement. Now, in 1973, 2 women's groups petitioned the General Convention, the governing board, to ask that the priesthood and the episcopate, that's to be a bishop or a priest, should be open to women. That was after they had been kind of gaped from behind, from the people down below. And the resolution failed. That was 1973. But when it was brought up again in 1976, 3 years later, it passed. The stained glass ceiling held sway in conservative Episcopal church circles, but gradually women priests were hired by parishes not only to be an associate priest, but to be their senior pastor, called a rector. Now, not all members of the worldwide Anglican Communion support women's ordination. Those most staunchly against it are some bishops in Africa and a few bishops in the United States. I have been, just as an example, an ordained Episcopal priest for about 15 years, and have only not felt supported in my ministry role from a few conservative Anglicans who have broken away from the Episcopal Church in protest over us renegade women priests and other marginalized persons. In my chaplaincy roles at Nathan Adelson Hospice and Paul Mortuary and Compassion Care Hospice, I experienced validation and acknowledgement of my ordination as a woman priest. Patients never hesitated to see me and accept me as clergy. In my 15 years as a priest, I have served as an associate priest, rector, chaplain in healthcare settings, and most recently our Nevada bishop, a man, named me dean of the southern part of Nevada to assist him with parish visitation and to help provide pastoral needs to the 11 Episcopal parishes in the southern Nevada area. In 1989, the first American female priest, Barbara Harris, a woman of color, was consecrated a bishop in Massachusetts. Not only was she the first woman priest to be a bishop, she was a black woman. So she hit 2 stained glass ceilings. Later, women priests were consecrated in the 1990s in Washington, D.C., Vermont, New York, Rhode Island, Utah, Indianapolis, Maine, and the 9th woman consecrated bishop was Catherine Jeffords Shorey for Nevada in 2001. And in her 6th year of being our bishop of Nevada, she was the very first woman to ever be nominated to stand for election for the top governing position of the entire Episcopal Church, known as the presiding bishop. First time a woman was nominated. And what do you suppose? Her male colleague bishops elected her. In a stunning surprise, they elected her from the field of 5 bishops, the other 4 were male, to be our presiding bishop in 2007, a 9-year position she now holds. So she leads the Episcopal Church, most of whose members are in the United States, but in about 15 other member countries as well.